So, I have here the Lenovo Yoga Slim 7X with a SnapDragon Elite X inside of it. And today I'm going to compare this to the MacBook Air M3. These are both the slimmest Snapdragon and the slimmest MacBooks that you can get right now. And we're going to compare both of these. Both of these products are within $100 of each other. The Lenovo that we have right here is only $100 more than the MacBook Air, but you are going to be getting quite a lot more with this Lenovo, as we will discover in this video today. And I think this is going to be my last sort of main comparison at this stage with the new Snapdragon Elites coming out, because at the end of the day, you could start to milk it here. We could just start comparing it to, I don't know, the M3 Pro, the M3 Max, and it's just going to get silly that we're going to get so many videos on YouTube with so many different comparisons. So I know when to quit. I'm going to quit after this video. But first of all, what I think we'll do is, to start this comparison, let me show you a bit of the unboxing of the Lenovo straight away. So it was quite a simple unboxing. Everyone's going plastic free here. So just open up the main kind of laptop box, and then inside of here, what we actually have, we have the Lenovo with the laptop, and then we also have the power supply too. And then obviously going back to Lenovo, taking it out here, sliding it out, and that was it. That's how easy unboxing was on here. And I think the best thing what we can do now after this has been unboxed is actually compare here what the actual design looks like on both of these models. So let's start out then with the Lenovo and what we've got. So we've actually got this lovely sort of dark blue kind of color. It reminds me of the sort of midnight sort of blue that we have with the MacBooks. But yeah, this color is a little bit lighter, I would say, but it's an all metal design. It's really, really gorgeous. And yeah, I really, really love this whole design. Nice and thin, as we will talk about later on. And then with the MacBook Air, obviously we've had this design now for 2 generations, the M2 and the M3. It's exactly the same design. And I would say probably this is Apple's best kind of MacBook design that they have right now with all of their sort of MacBook Pros and the MacBook Air. I really do love this all metal design from Apple too. Personally, in my opinion, I think this Lenovo is probably the best looking Snapdragon laptop out there right now as well, out of all the range, you know, coming from Samsung, Asus, you know, from Microsoft too. I really, really am in love with this design. It's really, really lovely on here. But let's talk about then the actual screen next of all, because we actually do have some differences here. We actually have here a 13.6 inch display, and we also have here a 14.5 inch display on the Lenovo. The Lenovo 7X weight is also 1.28 kilograms, but do remember that we have a fan in here too, and also, like I said, we have that larger display. The MacBook Air though is 1.24 kilograms, so this is about 40 grams less than what we have with the Lenovo. And just to put that into perspective for you, that is probably about the weight of 2 tempered glass screen protectors for an iPhone 15 Pro Max. So you know how light that is. So really, holding both of these, you're really not going to feel the difference in weight there. But like I said, what is crazy is that with only being 40 grams more, we do have that bigger screen. We've got basically a 1-inch screen bigger than the MacBook. And like I said again, we've got fans in here too, what is really, really impressive for its weight. But then moving on to the dimensions, and at the end of the day, this is the thing. I said this is the thinnest sort of MacBook that you can get right now, and the thinnest laptop we can get right now. So let's have a look at the dimensions here. The MacBook Air is 30.41 by 21.5 centimeters in length and width, whereas the Lenovo, obviously with the bigger display, it's 32.5 by 22.5 centimeters in length and width, and really that's not too much more, to be fair. But then next of all, for the thickness of both of these, and this is the thing what you're probably really wanting to know. So with the lids closed here, Lenovo is only 129 millimeters thick, so just under 1.3 centimeters. And then the MacBook Air is 113 millimeters thick, so we're just over 1.1 centimeters thick here. But like I said, it's crazy to think that this is a completely fanless MacBook that we have here, but there is actually a fan actually inside of this model here, which is crazy, and we're only going to be about, say, 1.5 millimeters thicker to actually have that. And as you can see here, doing a side-by-side comparison here, really there's not a lot in it at all. But next of all, let's talk about the display. And I'm not sure if you can see this here, because obviously we're recording in SDR. You can probably tell already that the Lenovo has a far superior display than the MacBook Air. And let's just talk about that quickly now. It actually is a 3K OLED display with 240 pixels per inch at the 14.5 inches. And also, this OLED display, I would say it's probably one of the best I've ever seen in a laptop. And I would say it's just underneath, and I mean just an iPad Pro M4, I would say, with their OLED display. I would even say that it's a better OLED display than the Samsung Edge 4 that I reviewed recently the other day. It is really, really crisp and amazing. It's even better than the MacBook Pro 14-inch with a mini LED display too, and it has a refresh rate of 90Hz, what is still very good. For nits-wise, in brightness, the display can also go up to 1,000 nits in standard sort of screens in SDR here, what is really, really amazing to use outside if you had to do that. And then also the screen is touchscreen if you love that or hate that. And remember guys, this is only $100 more than the baseline MacBook Air, and let me tell you about this display instead. So this is only a 13.6 inch display, but we also have that notch. This is a display what's about a 2K display, gives us 224 pixels per inch. The other thing to mention is that this is a standard LED Retina display. This is the same technology that was introduced to the MacBook Pros about 14 years ago now. So yeah, that's crazy to think that that sort of display technology is exactly the same what's in this MacBook Air today. It can only go up to 60Hz in the refresh rate, and the brightness is only 500 nits. This one I think is super easy if we were to do a comparison here on design, and also I would say on the screen technology and also the screen itself, that the Lenovo wins hands down here. Obviously, you know, this is 1.5 millimeters, and get a ruler to check that out, how tiny that is. Slimmer than we have here with the Lenovo Yoga, and again 40 grams lighter. And again guys, I will emphasize the fact here that's about 2 tempered glass screen protectors for an iPhone 15 Pro Max. That is super light. I would say this definitely wins here on the design sort of factor, and also we've got that fan inside of it. We've also got the larger display, a better display, and yet 40 grams more heavier, and then also it's just 1.5 millimeters thicker too. What a real impressive design that we have here with Lenovo. So next of all, let's talk about the ports then. So Lenovo here actually has 3 times USB-C ports, and they're also USB 4 speeds. And it also has 2 on one side and also has 1 on the other. Any of these ports on this Lenovo can be used for charging, which is really useful, because sometimes you want to put your cable on one side, sometimes you want to put your cable on the other. So I find that really handy to actually have that. And then the great thing is, if you're not charging this Lenovo, you can use all 3 ports for thumb drives and accessories, what's really awesome. The MacBook Air also has 3 ports on it too, but all of those ports are all on one side. 2 of those ports are USB-C ports, and they're USB 4 Thunderbolt 4, and then also we have this amazing MagSafe port too. For me on this, on comparison on ports, I think I'm going to call it a draw here. I think it's really good that obviously you've got the USB-C that you can actually plug it in one side and the other, like I mentioned before, and I really like that we can charge it, and then obviously without charging we can use all 3 ports, which is really useful. But there again, I would say the MagSafe port is really great too to have here on the MacBook. And obviously if you've ever been in that scenario, someone trips over your cable, it just pops out, it's just a big sigh of relief. Obviously if that port broke here on the Lenovo, yeah, it's going to cost you a lot of money, or if your laptop went flying too, yeah, it's going to cost a fair bit. But I think for the convenience, obviously with those ports and the extra ports, and then obviously with the MagSafe here, but obviously there's 1 less port and only on one side, I am literally going to say, like I said, this is a draw here on this one. Moving on to storage then, and starting out with the MacBook Air, the storage are NAND chips and they're soldered on, and the base configuration, like we have in this MacBook Air, is only 256 gigabytes. The Lenovo though, on the other hand, we actually have 512 gigabytes of storage inside of this, and also that storage is NVMe and it can be upgraded too, so that's really useful. I think you can go all the way up to 4 terabytes inside of this, with an NVMe inside of that with an SSD. So that's really, really good. And I think straight away I'm going to say it then, probably the Lenovo Yoga here. You know, that wins hands down, that we can upgrade the storage, and also that the base storage in this is 512 gigabytes, double the amount that we get in the MacBook Air. So yeah, I think definitely for your money, like I said, that $100 more, the better screen so far. We're getting more storage, what can also be upgraded too. This is winning at the moment in my eyes. But next of all, let's do the specs of the machines, or the system on chip, or the SoC. And I've said this before in sort of recent Snapdragon Apple reviews, it is really, really tricky to do. There isn't an exact kind of comparison rival between both of them. As you probably know already, there's so many sort of different vanillas out there, or different kind of flavors of the Snapdragon out there. They're not all the same. Whoever gets their hands on that Snapdragon, you know, Lenovo, Asus, or whoever, they can change the amount of power, what's going into that chipset and things like this too. So yeah, it gets a little bit complicated on this. But the main thing is, what we actually have is we have the Snapdragon X Elite in here, we have the lowest one in here, and we also have the standard M3 inside of this. And let's now look a bit more closer into this sort of Apple to sort of Dragon comparison. We can't do an orange to orange comparison, we can only do an sort of an Apple to a Dragon comparison. And let's have a look. So then, starting out with this Snapdragon X Elite then, obviously there's, like I said, there's many different vanillas, as it were, of kind of the Snapdragon X Elite. But the one that I have here, the SoC that I have here, is the X1E 8100. And obviously, this is Lenovo customizing it slightly to their advantage, obviously, so everything's going to be different here across the board, depending if you get yourself an Asus, if you get yourself a Surface Pro, or you get yourself a Surface laptop. The main thing is, on paper, this is what you're getting. So what we've got here is the X1E 8100, like I said, and then obviously the CPU starts at 3.4 gigahertz with this model here, for this baseline model. It is a 12 core, and we have 8 performance cores, and we also have 4 efficiency cores too. The GPU, cannot find out how many cores there are, but what we do know is it's 3.8 teraflops with the Adreno GPU inside of this. And also we do have 16 gigabytes of DDR5 RAM inside of this to be shared around this SoC here for CPU, the GPU, and also the NPU. And as you can see here, the NPU has 45 trillion operations per second here. That's how many it can do on the Snapdragon X Elite we have right here. So with the Apple M3, what's in this MacBook Air we have, so what we actually have here, we just have the standard M3, and obviously that CPU is clocked at 4.5 gigahertz there, or 4.0.5 gigahertz. And what we have inside of this, we have 8 times cores inside of it. So there's 8 cores inside of it. We have 4 performance cores, and we have 4 efficiency cores inside of this. And then obviously the GPU, we do actually have a 10-core GPU, and this gives us 3.55 teraflops inside of this. So yeah, it's still quite powerful for what it is. And we also, inside of this machine, actually have 8 gigabytes of DDR5X RAM. I don't know why we said 16 here, but it actually is 8. It's a mistake of mine there, so do ignore that. It is 8 gigabytes, my mistake. And then obviously the NPU inside of this is 35 trillion operations per second too inside of this. So yeah, that is still quite powerful for what we're getting in the M3. And moving on from that, let's of course now do some benchmarks, what you guys all want to see. Now obviously it's going to be very similar to previous sort of Snapdragons, but let's see what Lenovo have done then with the Snapdragon Elite X inside of this machine compared to an M3 MacBook Air. So first of all, we have Geekbench here, what's been loaded up, and yeah, I'm going to run this on both of these machines, and let's see what Geekbench gives us. So once that test was all completed, as you can see here on the MacBook Air with that 8-core M3, obviously the single core performance is really, really impressive here. We get 3053, and the multi-core score is 11,512. It's really, really good. Do remember, obviously, the M3 came at the end of 2023, where we have the new Snapdragon X Elite SoCs. They came out here in 2024, only around about, about 20 days ago at the time of making this this video or so on. But the main thing is, what you can see here is obviously the single core performance on this Lenovo with the Snapdragon inside of it. We get 2,448 on single core performance, but obviously the multi-core performance is 14,485, what is a lot more. But obviously one thing I would obviously say is that, you know, the Snapdragon, it does have more performance cores and actually has more cores overall compared to the M3 MacBook Air with those 8 cores inside of it. And it's a very similar story obviously when we did Cinebench 2. So with Cinebench, with the single core performance, we got 1,892 here on the MacBook Air, and obviously that gave us a 10,394 multi-core performance. Then the Lenovo here, obviously it got a little bit less here on Cinebench. It got 1,742. It is slowly just behind the MacBook Air on single core performance, but obviously multi-core performance, it was way ahead at 13,567. And like I said, because it has more of those performance cores and more cores just generally compared to the MacBook Air. After this, I've decided to do Geekbench machine learning to see what the NPU is like, or the neural engine is like. Let's see what's happening here. So here are the results then. So you can see here it's very, very similar in machine learning here on Geekbench. You know, we've got 2,306, 2,329. We're practically neck and neck here on machine learning on both of these socks that we have here from Apple and from Lenovo, well, from SnapDragon X Elite or Snapdragon. So yeah, really no difference there whatsoever. I've also decided to run 3D Mark here to do a performance check then on the GPU to see what we're getting here. And again, it's just really neck and neck. Both of them are 6,200 sort of range here. And I'm sure if I did this test again, you know, maybe the MacBook Air would overtake the Snapdragon. And then obviously if I did it again, probably the Snapdragon would win again because obviously it has the fan inside of it. Who knows? But really here on this benchmarking tool, both of them are around about the same. There's really going to be no difference here if you ran this kind of test. But obviously, doing games is going to make a difference, as we will see in a moment. So next of all, let's talk about battery life. Now, Apple claim with this 13-inch MacBook Air that you can get up to 18 hours of battery life inside of it. But then compared to the Lenovo here, they're actually claiming that you can get up to 22 hours. But obviously how this is measured with different brightness and sound, you know, sort of depths and what tests are being done, they're very different what have been done on here. But I do know that the battery inside the Lenovo is a 70 watt hour battery, whereas inside the MacBook Air what we actually have here is a 52.6 watt hour battery. I'm going to be honest here, overall I've not done a drain test on both of these, but I can tell you now the battery life has been superb on this Lenovo, and what I've been reading from other reviews out there, Lenovo actually does top the MacBook Air if you did the same sort of brightness and also the same sort of task on both of these machines. Lenovo actually just comes out in front on most scenarios. Obviously there's one or two where the MacBook Air will come out in front, but generally speaking the battery life is only slightly better. So if you were, say, for example, to get 8 hours out of this one, you know, by doing a certain task, on this one here you'd probably get yourself, say, 8.5 hours instead. It is very, very close indeed between both of these machines. And next of all, let's talk about games, and I've run a few games on both of these machines. So then what we have here then is the results, and starting out with the MacBook Air, and this is using crossover. So if you don't know what crossover is, look it up here on YouTube or Google it. It allows you to play some, not all, sort of x86 games, PC games on a Mac. So yeah, do look it up. Not every single game is compatible and there are some with issues. But the main point is, with GTA 5 using crossover, we got 89 frames per second. Cyberpunk 2077 we got 36. Horizon Zero Dawn we got 31. Now, Rise of the Tomb Raider, this is actually the native Mac version. Someone's actually converted this to work on ARM on the Tomb Raider, you know, on here on the Mac. So with that one, we got actually 96 frames per second on that one. But what's quite interesting now is we flick over to Lenovo with the Snapdragon Elite X, we're getting very similar kind of frames per second, and this is using Prism. So Windows Prism converts x86 apps to work on ARM, and as you can see here, GTA 5 we've got 88 frames per second, Cyberpunk 2077 we've got 35 frames per second, Horizon Zero Dawn we got 30 frames per second, then Rise of the Tomb Raider, again still riding on Prism, this is not native at all on here, we got 78 frames per second too. And really, generally speaking, with crossover versus what we've got here on Prism, it's very similar what we're actually getting here on sort of frames per second. Maybe the Apple one is 1 or 2 frames per frame second ahead there, but not much at all. Overall then guys, I would say just on specs alone, if I had a choice between both these machines, I would actually lean towards the Lenovo. And I know I'm a big fan of Apple, but specs alone, this is far better than this. Definitely, and I would easily pay $100 more for this. You're getting a bigger screen, you're getting a better screen with that, you're getting better battery life in general, you're getting a fan to keep that sort of sock, that Snapdragon X Elite cooler too, what is really great. And all it's going to sacrifice is 40 grams of weight. Remember, that's just the weight of 2 tempered glass screen protectors for an iPhone 15 Pro Max, what is nothing. And we're also getting that fan inside to keep that Snapdragon cooler. And yeah, it just costs, you know, $100 more for double the amount of RAM, 16 gigabytes of RAM, double the amount of storage, 512 gigabytes, and that's also upgradable compared to the MacBook Air. But there is the big but. Where there is the problem, what I see, is obviously this runs Windows, this runs Mac OS. And for me, I prefer Mac OS. Don't get me wrong, I do use Windows, and this is probably going to definitely be my primary Windows device going forwards now. I'm going to use is this Lenovo because it is absolutely amazing. But I'd say that's probably, in my opinion, with my Mac hat on and preferring that I prefer Mac to Windows, this is a great machine. Hopefully, you know, as crazy as it sounds, that one day somebody might be able to do like a Hackintosh or something like this and actually manage the way to work out with an ARM chipset to put Mac OS on this machine here. If they did that, I would actually, and it was easy to do, I'd be picking this over using one of these. And funny enough, if it was so easy to do, I would tell people to actually buy one of these, put Mac OS on it if everything just works flawlessly, and have this instead of getting one of these, because it is absolutely incredible. But those are my thoughts there. What are your thoughts? Do you like this Lenovo? What do you think of it? Do you think it's a great machine on specs, and do you think it's just Windows what lets it down? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And with that as well, guys, it's time to wrap up this video. So if you have enjoyed watching it, please do press the like button. And also, if you want to hear the latest Apple news, reviews, and comparisons like we've done today, make sure you subscribe to this channel and also hit that notification bell too. Until next time, guys, I'll see you really soon. Take care now. Bye bye.